"Sorry, sir, we're hungry." And the farmer did what no one expected. Jennifer Wilson never imagined her life would come to that point. 3 years ago, she had a steady job as a seamstress, a modest but decent rented house, and could provide the basics for Ethan and Emma, her 2 children. Now she was crouched on the straw floor of an old barn, shivering from the cold while frying 2 stolen eggs, trying not to cry in front of the children. It was the sound of heavy footsteps that made her freeze. Jennifer slowly looked up and saw the silhouette of a man standing at the barn entrance. The wide-brimmed hat covered part of his face, but she could feel the weight of his gaze. He was definitely the owner of that land. And she was trespassing on his property, using his barn, frying eggs that probably came from his chicken coop. "Sorry, sir. We're hungry." The words came out weak from her mouth, almost a whisper. The man didn't respond. He just stood there motionless as a statue, as 7-year-old Ethan shrank closer to his mother. 9-year-old Emma tried to look brave, but her eyes were wide with fear. The chickens around them continued pecking, indifferent to the tension in the air. Richard Thompson had seen many things in his 63 years of life. He'd seen good people turn bad because of money. He'd seen relatives betray each other over a piece of land. He'd seen the wife he loved leave taking their young daughter, leaving a hole in his chest that never closed. But that scene in his old barn, that too thin woman with 2 children covered in dirt, frying eggs in an old can over burning twigs, that stirred something inside him that had long been dormant. It wasn't pity. Richard didn't allow himself to feel pity. It was something different, something that left him unsettled. Maybe it was the way the older girl hugged her younger brother, trying to protect him. Or maybe it was how the mother kept her head up despite the humiliating situation. There was still dignity in those tired eyes. "You're trespassing on my property," Richard finally said, his voice hoarse and deep. "I know, sir. I'm sorry. We'll leave right now." Jennifer began to stand up, but her legs were shaking so much she almost fell. "Eat first," Richard said harshly. "Then leave." He turned his back and left the barn. His heavy footsteps faded in the direction of the big house about 300 meters away. Jennifer stood still, unable to believe he had simply left like that. She expected shouting, expected to be thrown out immediately, maybe even expected him to call someone to forcibly remove them. "Mummy, can we eat?" Ethan asked in his small voice. "Yes, my love." Jennifer divided the 2 fried eggs between her children, giving them the larger portions. She herself ate nothing, not from lack of hunger. Her stomach had been hurting for 2 days, but because seeing her children eat was more important than anything. Emma chewed slowly, making the egg last as long as possible. Ethan devoured everything in seconds, licked his fingers, and looked at his mother with those big, sad eyes that broke Jennifer's heart. "Are we staying here, Mom?" "We can't, son. The man told us to leave after eating." "But it's dark outside," Emma said, looking through the open barn door. Indeed, the sun had set and night was falling quickly over the farm. Jennifer knew they had nowhere to go. They had already walked miles that day, ever since they were chased from the last place they were sleeping, a space under a bridge by the road. A man had appeared early in the morning saying construction was starting there and they needed to leave. She gathered the few belongings she had in an old cloth bag and started walking with the children down the dirt road, with no clear destination. When she saw the farm in the distance, with its vast fields and the white house atop a gentle hill, she thought she might be able to ask for work, but as she got closer, she saw there was no sign of people, just an old car parked in front of the house and some chickens roaming the yard. So she decided that at least she could rest a bit in the barn she saw further away, just until the children regained their strength. She didn't imagine that barn was still in use, or that the farm owner would show up right there. "Let's wait until morning," Jennifer decided. "It's too cold to walk at night. I'll talk to the man tomorrow morning and apologize properly." She arranged a pile of old straw to make an improvised bed for her children. Ethan and Emma snuggled together, and within minutes they were asleep, exhausted. Jennifer stayed awake, sitting beside them, feeding the small fire with twigs to keep a little warmth. Her hands trembled, not just from the cold, but from everything she had lived through in the past months. 6 months ago, everything had completely fallen apart. The clothing factory where she worked closed its doors overnight. The owners simply disappeared without paying the back wages. Jennifer tried to do sewing at home, but without her own machine it was hard to compete. The rent was late, then later still, until the landlord knocked on the door and gave them 3 days to leave. She tried staying at a cousin's house in another neighborhood, but the cousin's husband made it clear he didn't want them there after 2 weeks. Then it was an old co-worker's house, who let them stay on the couch for a week. Then it was a tiny room she rented with the last money she had, but the money ran out after 15 days. Then it was the street. Jennifer never imagined she would be one of those people living on the street. She had always worked, always tried hard, but the world doesn't care much about effort when circumstances are against you. And now there she was, trespassing on a stranger's property, stealing eggs to feed her children. A tear rolled down her face. Jennifer wiped it away quickly, looking at the children to make sure they hadn't seen. Emma always noticed when she was crying, and Jennifer didn't want to worry her more than she already was. The sound of footsteps made her tense up again. Someone was approaching the barn. Jennifer stood up slowly, ready to grab her children and run if necessary, but it was just the farmer again. This time he was carrying something in his hands. Richard entered the barn carrying an old blanket and a thermos. He didn't look at Jennifer, just dropped the things on the floor near her. "It gets cold in the early morning," he said simply. "Thank you, sir," Jennifer managed to say, surprised. "No need to thank me." "I don't want you freezing out here and then saying it was my fault," he replied roughly, but Jennifer sensed no real malice in his tone. "Sir, I can work," she said quickly before he left. "I know how to cook, clean, sew. I can do anything in exchange for a place for the children to sleep. You don't have to pay me." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like, and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Richard stopped, but didn't turn to look at her. He stood with his back to her, as if thinking. The silence stretched for long seconds. "Tomorrow morning, 5 o'clock, you come to the house kitchen," he said finally. "There's firewood that needs splitting, a chicken coop to clean, a fence to fix. If you work properly, I'll let you stay in the barn for a few days, but it's only temporary, understand? I'm not making any commitments." "I understand, sir. Thank you very much. And don't call me sir all the time. My name is Richard." He left before Jennifer could respond. She stared at the blanket and the thermos. She opened the thermos and smelled the hot coffee. There was also bread wrapped in a cloth. She took a sip of the coffee, feeling the hot liquid go down her throat, warming her from the inside. She divided the bread into 3 pieces and saved 2 for her children to eat for breakfast. That night, covered by the old blanket that smelled of mold but was warm, Jennifer Wilson managed to sleep a few hours. It wasn't much, but it was more than she had gotten in the last few weeks. And for the first time in a long time, she felt a tiny flame of hope ignite within her chest. Richard couldn't sleep. He sat on the porch of the big house, smoking one cigarette after another, looking at the old barn in the darkness. He hadn't smoked for 5 years, but he had gone to get the old pack he kept in a kitchen drawer. Some things got to him in a way that only a cigarette helped to calm. That woman in the barn. There was something about her that bothered him. It wasn't just her situation, although that was bad enough. It was something else. Something in the way she looked at him, something familiar that he couldn't place. He shook his head, annoyed with himself. He was getting old and sentimental. She was just a desperate woman with 2 children, nothing more. He would let her work for a few days, pay her with food and shelter, and then she would be on her way. He wasn't going to get involved. Not again. Richard looked up at the window of the room on the upper floor of the house. The white curtains were still there, unmoving. He hadn't entered that room in 30 years. He kept the door locked. Sometimes on bad nights he would go up to the hallway and stand in front of the door, his hand on the doorknob, but he never opened it. It was Jennifer's room, his daughter. The girl who was born with a crescent moon-shaped birthmark on her left wrist. The girl who was only 3 years old when Sarah, his wife, left and took her away. Richard threw the cigarette on the ground and stepped on it. He stood up and went into the house, but he didn't go upstairs. He went to his own room on the ground floor, lay down on the bed without taking off his boots, and stared at the ceiling until the sun began to rise. At 5 o'clock in the morning sharp, Jennifer knocked on the kitchen door of the house. She had washed her face and hands in a small stream that ran near the barn, had combed her hair as best she could, and had woken the children, asking them to be quiet and well-behaved in the barn while she worked. Richard opened the door. He looked even older in the daylight, with deep wrinkles around his eyes and mouth, grey hair under his hat. But his eyes were alert and hard. "Come in," he said. The kitchen was large, with an old wood-burning stove, a solid wood table in the centre, and cabinets that looked decades old. Everything was clean, but there was a thin layer of dust that betrayed the fact that no one had cleaned it in a long time. "You said you know how to cook," Richard commented. "Make breakfast. You'll find everything you need in the pantry." Jennifer found eggs, cornmeal, ground coffee, milk, butter. She had everything to make a decent meal. She made fresh coffee, fried eggs, made cornbread. When everything was ready, she set it on the table. "Can the children come eat?" she asked. "You can call them." Jennifer went to get Ethan and Emma. They entered the kitchen with wide eyes, impressed by the size of the house. They sat at the table in silence, looking at Richard with a mix of respect and fear. "You can eat," Richard said. They ate too quickly, with the hunger of people who had gone many days without real food. Jennifer ate slowly, trying to be polite, but she was also starving. Richard ate in silence, without looking at anyone. "Good," he said when he finished. "Now there's work to be done. You'll start by cleaning the chicken coop. Then you'll wash the clothes that have piled up in the laundry area. Then you'll clean the whole house, starting with the living room. The children can help with light tasks, gathering twigs, feeding the chickens." "Yes, sir. Yes, Richard." "And one more thing." He looked directly at her for the first time. "There's a room upstairs that stays locked. Don't try to open it. Don't go near it. Understood?" "Understood." "Great. You can start." The day was long and tiring. Jennifer worked non-stop, and the children helped as best they could. Ethan gathered twigs and stacked firewood. Emma helped her mother wash clothes in the old tub. The sun was hot, but there was a good breeze that made the work less heavy. Richard appeared from time to time to check on the work. He didn't praise, but he didn't complain either. He just watched with that penetrating gaze and left. By late afternoon, Jennifer had cleaned the chicken coop, washed 3 loads of laundry, and was finishing cleaning the living room. The house was beautiful, full of well-preserved antique furniture, but there was a sadness in the air, as if those walls held many bad stories. "That's enough for today." Richard appeared in the living room doorway. "Have dinner in the kitchen. There's rice, beans, and meat in the refrigerator. Do whatever you want with it." "Thank you," Jennifer said. "Can I make some for you too?" "I don't need you to cook for me," he replied curtly. But when Jennifer prepared dinner and set a plate for him at the table, Richard appeared and ate with them. Again in silence, again without looking much at anyone, but he was there. This routine repeated over the next few days. Jennifer worked hard from early on. The children helped, and gradually the farm began to look less abandoned. The yard was clean, the clothes washed and ironed, the house shining. Richard didn't talk much, but he stopped being so harsh. Sometimes he even said good morning. A week after they had arrived, something happened that changed everything. Jennifer was in the backyard hanging sheets on the clothesline when she heard a strange noise coming from the back of the house. It sounded like someone crying. She hesitated, not knowing if she should go see, but curiosity and concern were stronger. She found Richard sitting on the steps of the back porch, his face in his hands. He was crying, not a soft cry, but deep sobs that shook his entire body. In his hand was an old photo, yellowed with time. Jennifer approached slowly, without making a sound. She didn't want to scare him or intrude on a private moment, but she also couldn't just walk away and pretend she hadn't seen. "Richard," she said softly, "is everything okay?" He lifted his head abruptly, wiped his face with his shirt sleeve. His eyes were red and swollen. "Get out of here," he said with a choked voice. "Sorry, I said get out." Jennifer stepped back, but in her haste she tripped on a stone and fell, sitting on the ground. The photo Richard was holding flew from his hand and fell near Jennifer. She instinctively picked it up. It was an old, faded photo of a beautiful woman holding a little girl. The girl was no more than 3 years old and was smiling at the camera. And on the girl's wrist, even in the old photo, you could clearly see a dark mark. A mark in the shape of a crescent moon. Jennifer felt her heart race. She looked at Richard, then at the photo again. Slowly, very slowly, she raised the left sleeve of her own blouse. There on her wrist was a birthmark, in the shape of a crescent moon. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard looked at Jennifer's wrist, then at her face, then at the photo she was holding. His expression changed from sadness to shock, then to something more complex, something between hope and terror. "No," he said finally, shaking his head. "No, no, no, this isn't possible. Jennifer couldn't finish the sentence. Her mind was spinning, trying to process what this meant. "Let me see this clearly." Richard stood up and went to her with quick steps. He took Jennifer Wilson's arm with a strength that almost hurt and examined the birthmark. His fingers trembled. "My God, you think I am—" Jennifer was trembling now too. "Jennifer." He whispered the name like a prayer. "My Jennifer." "My name is Jennifer Wilson," she said, but her voice came out weak. "Your name was Jennifer. Jennifer Thompson. You were born here on this farm 33 years ago." Jennifer sat on the step. Her legs couldn't hold her up anymore. 33 years. She was 33 years old. She never knew much about her origins. She grew up in an orphanage in Cleveland, had only vague memories from when she was very small. She remembered a woman who cried a lot, remembered moving places several times, and then the orphanage. Always the orphanage. "How do you know?" she asked. "Just because of the mark." "It's not just the mark," Richard said, sitting next to her. He was calmer now, but still trembling. "It's your face, your eyes. You look just like Sarah, my wife, and you have the same mark that Jennifer had. That mark is rare, very rare. It's exactly in the same place. But if you are my father, why did you abandon me? Why did you never look for me?" The question came out harsher than Jennifer intended, but she needed to know. If that man really was her father, he had a lot to explain. Richard closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, there was such deep pain in them that Jennifer almost regretted asking. "I didn't abandon you," he said. "Your mother left. Took you and left in the middle of the night. Left a note saying she would never come back, that I didn't deserve to be a father, that she was going to punish me by taking away the only thing I loved more than anything. Why? What did you do? He hesitated, and Jennifer saw the shame on his face. "I cheated on her. I had an affair with another woman. Brief, just a few months, but Sarah found out, and she never forgave me." Jennifer didn't know what to feel. Anger, sadness, relief at having found her father, resentment for everything she had been through. "Did you look for us?" she asked. "I looked for years," Richard said, and his voice was pure anguish. "I spent all the money I had paying detectives, going to different cities, following leads. But Sarah was smart. She moved around a lot, used fake names. After a while the leads dried up, they simply disappeared. And you gave up." "I never gave up," he said firmly. "But after 10 years with nothing, without a single sign, I had to accept that maybe I would never find you. I almost went crazy. I started drinking too much, almost lost the farm. My brother Robert wanted me to sell the land and split the money with him, said I was throwing everything away because of an obsession." "Your brother," Jennifer repeated. There was something in the way Richard talked about him that made her alert. "Robert never cared about anything but money," Richard said bitterly. "But that's another story. The important thing now is that you are here. You came back." He looked at her with so much hope in his eyes that Jennifer felt her heart tighten. But she wasn't ready to simply accept all that. Not yet. "And my mother?" she asked. "What happened to her?" "I don't know. I never heard from her again." She's not here anymore," Jennifer said softly. "She passed when I was 12. A heart condition. It was quick." Richard closed his eyes, and new tears streamed down his face. He wasn't angry at Sarah anymore, Jennifer realized. Only sadness. "I'm sorry," he said. She never talked about you, Jennifer continued. I grew up thinking my father had abandoned us, that he didn't want anything to do with us. She said you were a bad man, that it was better for us to be away from you. She was right, Richard said. I was a bad man, I was unfaithful, I was selfish. I destroyed my family because of a stupid mistake. But I loved you, Jennifer. I mean, Mariana. I loved you more than anything. Jennifer Wilson stood up. It was too much to process, too fast, too intense. I need to think, she said. I need time. Of course, Richard stood up too. Take all the time you need. But please don't leave. Stay here, you and the children, not as an employee, but as family. Jennifer Wilson looked at him. She saw an old and lonely man, carrying decades of regret and pain. She saw someone who perhaps deserved a second chance, but she also saw the man who had betrayed his wife, who had caused so much suffering that Sarah preferred to run away and live in poverty rather than stay with him. I'll stay for now, she said, but I don't know if I can call you father. You don't have to, Richard said. Call me whatever you want. Just stay. They stood there, two strangers united by blood and by a moon-shaped mark, trying to understand how to move forward from that point. The weeks that followed were strange for everyone. Ethan and Emma didn't really understand what had happened. They only knew that now they could stay on the farm without fear. Richard tried to get closer to Jennifer Wilson, but she kept a respectful distance. She worked as before, took care of the house and the children, but couldn't completely relax. At night, when the children were asleep, Jennifer Wilson stayed awake thinking. She thought about her mother, about how Sarah had been with her, loving but always sad, always looking over her shoulder, as if she were waiting for someone to appear. She thought about the stories Sarah told about Jennifer Wilson's father, always painting him as a monster, a heartless man. Had Sarah lied? Or did she have reasons that Jennifer Wilson didn't know about? One night, Jennifer Wilson decided to look for answers. She waited for Richard to fall asleep and went up the stairs to the second-floor hallway. There was the locked door, the door to the room that Richard had told her never to open. She knew she shouldn't do that. It was an invasion of privacy, it was breaking trust, but she needed to know. She needed to understand who that man had really been, who he was now. The door was locked, but the key was in the lock itself, on the outside. Richard had never taken it out. Jennifer Wilson turned the key slowly, trying not to make noise. The door opened with a slight creak. The room was exactly as it had been left 30 years ago. A small bed with children's teddy bear sheets, toys scattered on the floor, drawings on the walls made with crayons, little clothes hanging on the indoor clothesline. It was a sanctuary, a museum dedicated to a child who had disappeared. Jennifer Wilson entered slowly, feeling the tears begin to flow. There were photos on the dresser, photos of her as a baby, of her learning to walk, of her laughing in Richard's arms. In all the photos, Richard was smiling. He was a different man in those images, younger, happier. There was also a wooden box on the bed. Jennifer Wilson opened it and found more photos, birthday cards that were never delivered, gifts that were never given, one for each year. 30 gifts, 30 cards, all addressed to Jennifer. Inside the box there were also letters, dozens of them. They were letters that Richard had written to her over the years, letters he never sent because he didn't know where to send them. Jennifer Wilson picked one up and began to read. Jennifer, my beloved daughter, today you would be 5 years old. I bought a pink teddy bear that you would love. Remember how you always loved teddy bears? I keep it here in your room, waiting for the day you come back to get it. I haven't given up looking for you. I will never give up. You are my light, my reason to go on, your father who loves you. Jennifer Wilson read letter after letter. Some were short, just saying that he was thinking of her. Others were long, telling about his day, about the farm, about how much he missed her. They all ended the same way, your father who loves you. She was so absorbed in reading that she didn't hear the footsteps on the stairs. She didn't hear the door opening further. She only realized Richard was there when he spoke. I should have locked that door with a padlock. Jennifer turned around, tears flowing freely now. Richard stood in the doorway, wearing only old pants and a t-shirt, barefoot, his hair messy like he had just woken up. "I'm sorry," she said. "I shouldn't have come in." "No," he said, entering the room. "Maybe you should. Maybe it's time for this room to stop being a tomb." He looked around, seeing his own past spread across those walls. "Every year on your birthday I came up here," he said. "I sat on this bed looking at your photos, talking to you as if you could hear me. I know it's crazy, but it was the only way to keep myself sane." "It's not crazy," Jennifer said. "I never forgot you, Jennifer. I mean Mariana, sorry, it's still hard. You can call me Jennifer," she said. I think I'd like to be Jennifer again, at least here, with you." Richard looked at her with surprise and hope. "Really? You made mistakes," Jennifer said. "Terrible mistakes. But I see now that you paid for them. Paid every day for 30 years. And I see that you really loved me. Love me. More than anything," he said, his voice breaking. "So, yes, you can call me Jennifer. And I want to try. Try to get to know you. Try to have a family again." Richard crossed the room in 2 steps and hugged her. Jennifer tensed up at first, unaccustomed to affection, but gradually relaxed and returned the hug. They stayed like that for long minutes, father and daughter reunited after 3 decades apart. When they separated, both were crying and laughing at the same time. "Your grandchildren will enjoy getting to know their real grandfather," Jennifer said. "My grandchildren," Richard repeated as if he still couldn't believe it. "I have grandchildren." "Yes, you do. And they love stories. You'll have to tell them many. I'll tell them all they want." That night, for the first time in 30 years, Richard didn't leave after looking at the photos. He and Jennifer stayed in the room, talking about the past, about the present, about everything they had lost and everything they might recover. But not everything would be easy. 2 days later, Richard's brother showed up. Robert Thompson arrived in an expensive pickup truck, wearing brand-name clothes, expensive sunglasses. He was the same height as Richard, but fatter, with a prominent belly and a reddish face. He was only 58, 5 years younger than Richard, but looked older from the life he led, full of excesses. "Richard," he shouted, getting out of the truck. "Where are you, old man?" Richard came out of the house with a stern face. Jennifer, who was in the kitchen preparing lunch, went to the window to watch. "What do you want, Robert?" Richard asked bluntly. "What kind of way is that to greet your brother?" Robert said with a fake smile. "I came to visit, of course. It's been months since we've seen each other." 3 months, and it wasn't enough. Still as bitter as ever, Robert looked around the farm. "I see you're taking better care of things around here. Did you hire someone?" "Something like that." "Great, great. But I didn't come to talk about employees. I came to talk business. That construction company I told you about is still interested in the land. They increased the offer. It's 400,000 now, Richard. 400,000 each. We split it and get rich." "I already said I'm not selling." "Oh, Richard, stop being so stubborn. This farm hasn't made a profit in years. You can barely support yourself. Sell this land already and come live in the city with me. It'll be better for everyone." "No." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Robert sighed, taking off his sunglasses and wiping them with his shirt. "Listen here, man, you're getting old and alone. What's going to happen to this land when you die? It'll go to the state. Better to sell now while you can still enjoy the money." "I'm not alone," Richard said, and there was something different in his voice, something firm. "No?" Robert looked around again, confused. "Is someone living here with you?" It was at that moment that Jennifer Wilson decided to come out of the house. She wiped her hands on her apron and walked over to where they were. "Good afternoon," she said. Robert looked her up and down, assessing her. A smile began to form on his face. "Hello," he said. "And you are?" "This is Jennifer," Richard said before she could answer. "She's my daughter." Robert's smile vanished instantly. He looked from Richard to Jennifer and back to Richard. "What?" was all he could say. "Jennifer is back," Richard said, and there was pride in his voice. "After 30 years, my daughter has returned." Jennifer saw something flash across Robert's face. Something quick, something he tried to hide, but she saw it. It was fear. Or maybe it was guilt. Or maybe both. That's impossible, Robert said, but his voice sounded strange. Jennifer has been missing for decades. How can you be sure this woman is really your daughter? She has the mark, Richard said simply. Jennifer raised her arm, showing the crescent moon-shaped birthmark. Robert looked at it, and his expression grew even more troubled. That doesn't prove anything, he said, but without conviction. Lots of people could have a similar mark. Not like this one, Richard said. And she looks like Sarah. It's Jennifer, Robert. I know it is. Robert was silent for a few seconds, clearly thinking fast. Well, if it's true, then congratulations, he said finally, forcing a smile. It's a miracle. But it doesn't change the situation with the land, Richard. You're still having financial difficulties. It would still be better to sell. I'm not selling. And now I have even more reason to keep the farm. I want to leave it to my daughter and my grandchildren. Grandchildren? Robert seemed to grow even paler. I have 2 grandchildren, Ethan and Emma. Robert opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. He looked like a fish out of water. This changes everything, he murmured, more to himself than to them. Changes what? Richard asked. Nothing. Nothing, Robert said quickly. I'm just surprised, that's all. Well, I need to go. I have appointments in the city. But we'll talk, Richard. He got back in his truck and sped off quickly, kicking up dust. Jennifer looked at Richard, confused. He seemed very nervous, she commented. Robert always gets nervous when things don't go his way, Richard said. Don't mind him. But Jennifer couldn't help thinking about the way Robert had looked at her. There was something there, something she couldn't identify. It was as if he had seen a ghost. And that reaction when Richard said he wouldn't sell the land. Something was wrong. Jennifer could feel it. The following weeks were relatively peaceful. Jennifer and Richard got to know each other better, talking about the past, about each other's lives. Ethan and Emma started calling Richard Grandpa, and he loved it. He spent hours playing with them, teaching them about the farm, telling stories. Jennifer began to hope that maybe, finally, things could get better. But life had different plans. One afternoon she was cleaning Richard's office when she found a drawer that was locked. She knew she shouldn't snoop, but curiosity got the better of her. She took a paperclip and picked the lock. Inside were several documents. They were old papers, some yellowed with time, unpaid bills, debt notices, letters from banks. Jennifer read everything with a racing heart. Richard was in debt, deeply in debt. He owed money to 3 different banks, had overdue taxes on the farm, and had accumulated electricity and water bills. There was also a lawsuit. Robert was suing Richard for half of the land, claiming it had been left as an inheritance by their parents, and that Richard had never properly divided it. Jennifer sat in the chair, trying to process it all. Richard was bankrupt, the farm was about to be seized, and his brother was trying to steal the land. She heard footsteps and quickly put everything back in the drawer. Richard entered the office. Jennifer, is everything okay? She hesitated. Should she tell him she had seen the documents? Richard, are you having money problems? His face changed. The open, calm expression disappeared, replaced by a tension that made his jaw rigid. How do you know that? I found the documents in the drawer, she admitted. Sorry, I shouldn't have touched them. Richard sighed heavily and sat in the other chair. There's no use hiding it anyway, he said. Yes, I'm in trouble, big trouble. After Sarah left with you, I kind of gave up on everything for a while. I let the farm go, spent money I didn't have looking for you. I took out loans I couldn't pay back. And now it's all falling apart. Why didn't you tell me? Because you just got here. Because I wanted you to stay without worrying. Because I'm ashamed. How much do you owe? A lot. Too much to pay back. And Robert's lawsuit? That's another story, Richard said bitterly. Our father left the farm for the 2 of us to split when he passed away 20 years ago. But Robert didn't want to work the land. He wanted to sell everything and split the money. I refused. I offered to buy his share gradually, but he didn't accept. Now he's suing to force the sale. Is that legal? With a good lawyer, yes. And Robert has a great lawyer. Jennifer felt anger growing inside her. Anger at Robert, anger at the unfair situation, anger at how life seemed determined not to give that family any peace. "We have to do something," she said. "There's nothing to do, Jennifer. I've already accepted that I'm going to lose the farm. I was just trying to enjoy this time with you before everything falls apart." "No," Jennifer said firmly. "We're not giving up. This farm is yours. It's mine. It's my children's. And we're not going to let Robert take it." "And how do you plan to stop it?" "I don't know yet," Jennifer admitted, "but I'll find out." That night, she couldn't sleep. She stayed awake in the barn where she still slept with the children, thinking, planning. There had to be a way. There had to be something they could do. The next day, Jennifer went to the nearest town. Richard stayed on the farm with the children. She needed to do research, find out about the lawsuit, maybe find a lawyer who could help. The public library had free internet. Jennifer spent hours reading about rural property laws, inheritance division lawsuits, agricultural debts. She didn't understand everything, but she took notes on what she found important. That's when she found something interesting. A law that said if there were direct heirs living on the property and working it, a forced sale could be contested. And she was a direct heir. And she was living there and working. Jennifer felt a spark of hope. Maybe there was a way. She looked for free legal aid offices. There was one run by the Public Defender's Office that served low-income people. Jennifer went there, waited 3 hours to be seen, and finally got to talk to a young lawyer named Ms. Jessica. "So you're saying you're the daughter of Richard Thompson and only found out recently?" Ms. Jessica asked. "Exactly. I have proof. I have the same birthmark I had as a child, and if needed, I can take a DNA test." "And you're living and working on the farm?" "Yes, for a few weeks now, Ms." Jessica thought for a moment, taking notes. "This could help," she said, "but it's going to be complicated. I'll need to see all the documents, study the case properly. It might take some time." "How long do we have until the court decision?" "From what you've told me, the hearing is in 2 months. It's not much time, but maybe it'll be enough." "Please," Jennifer said. "This farm is all my father has, and now it's all I have too. We can't lose it." "I'll do what I can," Ms. Jessica promised. Jennifer returned to the farm feeling a little better. At least now she had a plan, had someone who could help. She told everything to Richard, who was surprised and moved. "You didn't have to do this," he said. "Yes, I did. You're my father. And I won't let Robert win, but Robert wasn't the kind of man who gave up easily." A few days later, he showed up again. This time he wasn't alone. He brought a man in a suit, whom he introduced as his lawyer, Mr. Bradley. "Richard, we need to talk," Robert said seriously. "I have nothing to talk to you about," Richard replied. "I think it's better to talk," Mr. Bradley said, opening a briefcase and taking out several papers. "Because if you don't talk now, you'll be forced to talk in court. And there I guarantee the conversation will be much less pleasant for you." "What do you want?" Jennifer asked, coming out of the house. "Ah, the long-lost daughter," Robert said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Jennifer, right? Or should I call you Sophia?" "Whatever. Well, Sophia, we're here to make an offer. A very generous one, I must say. I'm not interested in any offer from you." "You don't even know what it is yet," Mr. Bradley said. "Hear us out first, then decide." Richard crossed his arms. "Then speak up." "The offer is simple," Robert said. "You sell the farm to the construction company. With the money from the sale, you pay off all of Richard's debts, and what's left, we split. 3 equal parts. 1 for me, 1 for Richard, and 1 for you, Sophia." "And why would I get a share if I'm just Richard's daughter?" Jennifer asked, suspicious. "Because you're also an heir," Mr. Bradley explained. "As Richard's biological daughter, you're entitled to part of his inheritance, so it's fair that you get a share of the sale too." "And if we don't want to sell?" "Then the lawsuit continues," Robert said. "And I guarantee you'll lose. Judges have no mercy on unproductive properties full of debt. They'll force the sale anyway. Only then you'll have no control over the process. You'll sell for less, and the money will all go to pay debts. Nothing will be left." Jennifer looked at Richard. He was pale, clearly thinking about Robert's words. "How much is the construction company offering?" Richard asked. "500,000, Robert said. "After paying your debts, which total about 200,000, 300,000 remains. 100,000 for each." It was a lot of money. More money than Jennifer had ever seen in her life. With $100,000 she could start over, give her children a decent life, maybe even start her own business. But would it be right? Would it be fair to sell the farm that Richard loved so much? The farm that was his only physical connection to the past, to the memories of when he had a family. "We need to think," Jennifer said. "You have 1 week," Mr. Bradley said. "After that, we withdraw the offer and proceed with the lawsuit." They left, leaving Richard and Jennifer in a tense silence in the yard. "What do you think?" Richard asked. "I don't know," Jennifer Wilson admitted. "It's a lot of money, but you don't want to sell, do you?" Richard looked around the farm, the fields, the house, the barn, everything that had been his home his whole life. "No," he said. "I don't. But maybe it's for the best. Maybe it's time to accept defeat." "You're not defeated yet," Jennifer said. "The lawyer said we have a chance to win. We just need to have faith." But faith was in short supply in those days. The situation seemed more and more desperate. Richard grew quieter, more withdrawn. He spent hours sitting on the porch, staring into space. Jennifer tried to stay strong for the children and her father, but inside she was falling apart. She had found a family, a home, only to see it all taken from her again. One night, she was in the barn when she heard a strange noise coming from the house. It sounded like something breaking. She ran there and found Richard in the office, with the chair knocked over on the floor and papers scattered everywhere. He was having what looked like a panic attack, breathing too fast, sweating cold. "Richard," she ran to him. "What's happening?" "I can't breathe," he said between short breaths. "My chest. I'll take you to the hospital." "No, it's nothing. I just need to calm down." Jennifer helped him sit on the floor, leaning his back against the wall. She held his hand and started breathing slowly, exaggeratedly, encouraging him to imitate. "Breathe with me. Slowly. In, out. In, out." Gradually, Richard's breathing returned to normal. The panic in his eyes subsided, but when it passed, he started to cry. Not the restrained crying he usually did, but a desperate cry from someone who had reached their limit. "I'm tired, Jennifer," he said. "Tired of fighting, tired of losing. Every time I think things are going to get better, everything falls apart again." "We're not giving up," Jennifer said, hugging him. "We're stronger than this." "I don't know if I am." "Then let me be strong for the both of us." They stayed like that for a long time, until Richard calmed down completely. Jennifer helped him to the bedroom and into bed. She sat by his side until she was sure he was asleep. When she left, she was more determined than ever. She wasn't going to let that farm be sold. She wasn't going to let Robert win. Somehow she was going to find a way. The next day, Jennifer went back to the city. This time she didn't go to the library or the public defender's office. She went to a different place. She went to the county clerk's office. She had thought a lot about the whole situation, about how Robert had reacted when he found out she was Richard's daughter, about the fear she saw on his face. There was something there that didn't add up. At the clerk's office, she asked to see the inheritance documents of Richard and Robert's parents. She spent hours reading wills, property records, old deeds, and that's when she found something strange. The will said the farm would be divided equally between the two brothers, but there was a clause that Jennifer hadn't seen mentioned in any of Robert's lawsuit papers. The clause stated that if one of the brothers had direct heirs who wanted to remain on the property, that brother would have preference for full possession of the land, only needing to financially compensate the other brother. Jennifer made copies of everything and ran to Ms. Jessica's office. "This changes everything," the lawyer said upon seeing the documents. "With this clause, and with you being a direct heir who wants to remain on the property, Robert's lawsuit loses all its strength. He can't force the sale, he can only demand financial compensation for his share. And if we don't have the money to compensate, that's another problem. But at least the farm doesn't have to be sold. A long-term payment agreement can be made. Jennifer felt as if she had lifted a huge weight off her shoulders. It wasn't a complete solution yet, but it was a huge step forward. "There's something else," she said. "The way Robert reacted when he found out I'm Richard's daughter. He got scared. And I have a theory why." "What?" "I think he knew I was Richard's daughter. I think he knew where I was all this time." Miss Jessica grew serious. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have proof?" "No, just intuition. But it makes sense. If I had shown up earlier, his legal process could never have happened because of that clause. He had an interest in keeping me away. But how would he know where you were? And even if he knew, what could he do? I don't know, but I want to find out." Jennifer left the office with more questions than answers. She needed proof. She needed to find out what had really happened 30 years ago. She decided to start with Sarah, her mother. She still had some things that had belonged to her, stored in an old box. Jennifer had never looked through it properly. It was too painful after Sarah passed away. But now she had to. Back at the barn, she grabbed the box and started sifting through the contents. Old clothes, some cheap jewelry, documents. But there was something that caught her attention. A notebook, a diary. Jennifer opened the diary and started reading. They were Sarah's notes over the years. It wasn't a regular diary, with entries every day, but scattered notes from important moments. The first entry that caught Jennifer's attention was from 30 years ago, right after Sarah had run away with her. "I made the decision. I took Jennifer and left. Richard doesn't deserve to be a father after what he did. But I'm so scared, so alone, I don't know how I'm going to support my daughter. I just know I need to stay away from him, away from that farm, away from everything." The next entries talked about Sarah's struggles. How hard it was to find work without references, how she had to keep moving from town to town, always afraid of being found. And then, 3 years after the escape, there was a disturbing entry. "He found me. Richard's brother. Robert found me. He said Richard is looking for me, that he's desperate. But he also said that if I come back, Richard will take Jennifer away from me. He said Richard has lawyers, has money, and that I won't win in a legal battle. He said the best thing I can do for my daughter is to disappear for good. He even offered me money. Not much, but enough to start over somewhere else. I accepted. God forgive me, but I accepted." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, Jennifer read the entry again, unable to believe it. Robert had found Sarah, and instead of telling Richard, he had paid Sarah to stay hidden. Why? Why would he do that? She kept reading. There were more entries about Robert. He would show up from time to time, always with money, always telling Sarah to stay away. And Sarah, desperate and with no options, would accept. The last entry about Robert was from 7 years ago, shortly before Sarah passed away. Robert showed up again. He said Richard is worse than ever, drinking too much, the farm falling apart. He said he'll soon get what he always wanted, the land. I realized too late what I did. I realized that Robert used me. He wasn't protecting Jennifer. He was protecting his own interests. He took Jennifer out of Richard's life because he knew that as long as Richard had an heir, he could never take the land. And I was foolish enough to let him. I don't know if Richard would forgive me, but I will never forgive myself. Jennifer closed the diary with trembling hands. Now everything made sense. Robert had manipulated everything. She had used Sarah, had kept mother and daughter away from Richard, all so that one day she could take the farm for herself. And when Sarah left and Jennifer went to the orphanage, losing all contact with the past, Robert probably thought he had won. That Richard's heir would never appear again. Until she appeared. By chance, not knowing anything, she had returned exactly to her father's farm and ruined all of Robert's plans. Jennifer grabbed the diary and ran to the house. She found Richard in the barn, fixing a fence. "Richard, I need to show you something." She handed him the diary and waited as he read. She saw his face change from confusion to shock, to pure anger. "My brother," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion. "My own brother did this." He manipulated everything. Kept you away from me and from Sarah, also he could have the farm. Richard crumpled the diary in his hands, the anger overflowing. But then, slowly, the anger gave way to something else. Determination. "We need to take this to the lawyer," he said. "This is proof that Robert acted in bad faith. His lawsuit can be dismissed." "That's what I thought too. I'll call Miss Jessica now." The lawyer was extremely interested when she heard about the diary. She scheduled a meeting for the next day and asked them to bring all the evidence they had. But Robert wasn't stupid. That very night, he showed up at the farm again. This time, he was visibly nervous. "Richard, we need to talk," he said. "I have nothing more to say to you," Richard replied coldly. "Please, bro, it's important." "I'm not your bro. You stopped being my brother a long time ago." "Richard, I know you're upset about the land situation, but—" "Upset?" Richard let out a humorless laugh. "You think I'm upset about the land? I'm angry because you destroyed my family." Robert turned pale. "What are you talking about?" "I know what you did," Richard said. "I know you found Sarah and Jennifer. I know you paid them to stay away. I know you manipulated everything so you could have the farm." That's not true," Robert stammered. "Who told you these lies?" "They're not lies." Jennifer appeared holding the diary. "It's all here, written by my own mother." Robert looked at the diary and his face lost all color. "Let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," Richard said. "You took my daughter from me, kept me suffering for 30 years, made Sarah live in poverty, all out of greed." "I was trying to protect you," Robert said desperately. "Sarah was unstable, Richard. She wasn't good for you." "She wasn't unstable at all. She was a woman I hurt, that I betrayed, and that you manipulated." I didn't know it would turn out like this," Robert said, and for the first time he seemed genuinely distressed. "At first it was just to give her some money, to help you two stay away while you recovered. But then things escalated and I didn't know how to stop." "You didn't want to stop," Jennifer said with disgust. "You saw an opportunity and took it." "I'm sorry," Robert said, and there were tears in his eyes now. "Truly, Richard, I'm sorry for everything. I ruined everything, ruined your life, Sarah's life, Jennifer's life. And for what? For a piece of land I don't even know what to do with. You should have thought of that before. I know, and I'll pay for it. I'll drop the lawsuit. I'll give up any rights to the farm. You can have it all." "We don't want your charity," Richard said. "It's not charity, it's the least I can do. I want to try to fix this. I know I can't erase the past, but I can try to do better in the future." Jennifer looked at Richard, trying to understand what he was feeling. She saw anger there, but she also saw pain. Through the pain of decades of suffering, of a family torn apart, of lost opportunities. "You should leave," Richard said finally, his voice tired. "And don't come back." "Richard." "Leave, Robert. Before I do something I'll regret." Robert looked at his brother for a long moment. Then he nodded and left without another word. Richard stood still, watching the pickup truck drive away with Jennifer by his side. "Do you think he meant it?" she asked. "About dropping the lawsuit? I don't know, but even if he does, it doesn't change what he did. It doesn't change the 30 years he stole from me." "It doesn't," Jennifer agreed. "But at least now we know the truth." In the following days, they waited to see what Robert would do, and to their surprise he kept his word. He sent a formal letter to the court, withdrawing the lawsuit. He also sent signed documents renouncing any rights to the farm. Ms. Jessica confirmed that everything was legally in order. The farm belonged to Richard, without any dispute. But the debt problem remained. Without selling the farm, how would they pay the $200,000 Richard owed? It was Jennifer who had the idea. One night she was talking with Ethan and Emma said something that sparked an idea in her mind. "Mommy, are we going to have to leave the farm when Grandpa doesn't have any more money?" the girl asked. "No, sweetie, we'll find a way to stay." "That's good. I like it here. It's big, there's space to play. Not like the other places we lived. And it was that phrase that gave Jennifer the idea. Space. The farm had plenty of space, lots of space that wasn't being used. The next day, she talked with Richard about her idea. "What if we turned part of the farm into a place to host people?" she said. "How do you mean?" "A kind of country inn. There are people who pay to spend weekends in the countryside, away from the city. We have the big house that's huge. We have the fields. We have peace and quiet. We could offer lodging, homemade food, farm tours." Richard thought for a moment. "I never thought about that, but it makes sense. And I've seen other farms doing it. It wouldn't be quick. It would take time to set up, to advertise. But in the long run, it could generate steady income. And in the meantime, how do we pay the debts? We could start small, sell some farm products, eggs, vegetables, fruit. It won't pay for everything, but it will help. And I can start sewing again, make custom clothes. Jennifer, you don't have to carry this burden alone." "I'm not alone. We're in this together." They started working on the plan. Richard fixed up the empty rooms in the big house. Jennifer cleaned everything until it shined. They painted, renovated, made everything presentable. Ethan and Emma helped too, excited about the project. Jennifer posted ads online in rural tourism groups. At first no one came, but after a few weeks they got their first reservation, a couple from New York wanting to spend a quiet weekend in the country. It was a success. The couple loved the experience, left an excellent review online and recommended it to friends. Soon more people started coming, not many, but enough to start making a difference. At the same time, Jennifer started selling eggs and vegetables at the town market every Saturday. Richard made artisanal cheese that also sold well. Gradually, the income increased. It still wasn't enough to pay all the debts, but it was a start. Richard managed to renegotiate with the banks, make agreements to pay little by little. It would take years, but it was possible. 6 months after Jennifer arrived at the farm, life had completely changed. The farm was alive again. There was movement of people, there was production, there was purpose. Richard was different too, lighter, more smiling. She still carried the pain of the past, but now she had hope for the future. And Jennifer Wilson finally felt at home. After years of wandering, with nowhere to stay, she had found a place where she belonged. It wasn't just the farm. It was the family. It was waking up every day and seeing her father making coffee in the kitchen. It was seeing her children running happily through the fields. It was feeling like she was part of something bigger than herself. One afternoon, she and Richard were sitting on the porch, watching the sun set over the fields. "Thank you," Richard said suddenly. "For what?" "For coming back. For not giving up on me when you found out the whole mess my life was. For fighting for the farm." "You're my father," Jennifer said simply. "That's what family is for, to be together, in the difficult times. I lost 30 years with you. 30 years I'll never get back. But maybe now we can build another 30 years, better ones." "I think so." They sat in a comfortable silence, watching the sky change color. Ethan and Emma were playing with the chickens in the yard, their laughter filling the air. It was a moment of peace, of contentment. But the peace wouldn't last long, because there were still secrets to uncover. There were still buried truths that needed to come to light. A few weeks later, Robert showed up again. But this time it was different. He didn't have the confident look of someone coming to do business. He was worn out, with deep dark circles under his eyes, his clothes wrinkled. "Richard," he said as he got out of the car, "I need to talk to you. It's important." "I have nothing to say to you," Richard replied. "Please, it's about Sarah, about what really happened." That phrase made Richard stop. Jennifer was also there and grew tense. "What about Sarah?" Richard asked. I lied. Not about everything, but about part of it. I really found Sarah after she ran away, and I really gave her money to stay away. But it wasn't just that. "What else?" Robert took a deep breath, as if preparing for something very difficult. "I told her about the affair. I was the one who told her." Richard was confused. "What do you mean?" "Sarah found out on her own. She found messages on my phone." "No." Robert shook his head. "She didn't find anything. I was the one who showed her. I took your phone when you were drunk and sent messages to the other woman, provoking compromising responses. Then I showed them to Sarah. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. You... Richard couldn't finish the sentence. The anger was so great that the words wouldn't come out. I wanted you to separate, Robert continued, the words coming out quickly now, as if he needed to release that burden. Because, with you separated, you would be vulnerable. And I could convince you to sell the farm, to divide the land, but Sarah didn't separate. She ran away. And she took Jennifer. That wasn't in my plans. I didn't want the child to be involved. But it happened. Jennifer felt nauseous. That man had destroyed her entire family for money, for pure greed. And then? Richard asked, his voice dangerously low. After you saw the damage you caused, what did you do? I tried to fix it, Robert said. I found Sarah, I gave her money. I thought I was helping. Helping, Jennifer exploded. You destroyed my childhood. My mother lived on the run, scared, in poverty because of you. I know, Robert said, and now he was crying openly. I know, and I live with that every day. I haven't slept well in years. Every time I close my eyes, I see Sarah's face when I gave her the money. So grateful but so sad. I see your face as a child, Jennifer, in that photo Richard showed me. Why are you telling this now? Richard asked. Because I'm sick, Robert said. I found out 3 months ago, a heart problem. The doctors don't know how much time I have left, but it's not long. And I don't want to leave without having confessed everything, without having asked for forgiveness. Forgiveness? Richard let out a bitter laugh. Do you think you deserve forgiveness? No, I don't. I know that, but I'm asking anyway. Richard looked at his brother, this man who had caused so much suffering, and felt nothing, neither anger nor pity, just a vast emptiness. Leave, Robert, he said. I won't forgive you, I can't. What you did is unforgivable. I understand, Robert wiped away his tears, but there's one thing I can do. It doesn't fix anything, but maybe it helps. He took an envelope from his pocket and handed it to Richard. It's the deed to my house in the city, and the documents for my bank account, everything I have. It's not much, but it's about $250,000, enough for you to pay off the farm's debts and still have some left over. Richard took the envelope without saying a word. It's not forgiveness, Robert said, and I don't expect you to accept it as an apology. It's just the least I can do. The farm should have always been entirely yours anyway. Our mother wanted it that way, but our father insisted on splitting it equally. Now it's as it should be. He walked back to the car. Before getting in, he turned around one more time. Jennifer, he said, looking at Jennifer Wilson, you're just like your mother. Sarah would be proud of the woman you've become. I'm sorry for everything. Then he got in the car and drove away. It was the last time they saw him. 2 weeks later, Richard received a phone call. Robert had passed away during the night. His heart had finally given out. The funeral was small. Robert didn't have many friends. Richard went, but stayed in the back, not speaking to anyone. Jennifer went with him, offering silent support. After the burial, as they were heading back to the farm, Richard finally spoke about it. I should feel something, he said. He was my brother. But all I feel is relief. Relief that it's over, that I don't have to deal with him anymore. I don't judge you, Jennifer said. He did terrible things. But in the end, he tried to make amends. In a strange way, but he tried. Yes, he did. I think I'll use his money. I'll pay off the debts as he wanted. But I'll do something more. I'll transform that room, the one I kept closed for 30 years, into something new, something positive. What are you thinking? I don't know yet, but something that honors you, that honors Sarah, that even honors Robert, despite everything, something that turns pain into hope. The idea took a few weeks to take shape, but when it did, it was perfect. Richard decided to turn the farm into a temporary home for mothers and children in difficult situations. Not an orphanage, but a place where women going through tough times could stay with their children while they recovered and got back on their feet. Like you and your children were when you arrived here, Richard explained to Jennifer. You needed a safe place, a chance. I want to give that to others. The idea was ambitious. It would require renovations, permits, a lot of work, but it was possible. With Robert's money, they could pay off the debts and still have enough to start the project. Jennifer loved the idea, not just because it was noble, but because it made sense. It turned their story of pain into something that could help others. The next few months were filled with hard work. They renovated the main house to have more rooms. They obtained permits from the city. They registered as a non-profit organization. They partnered with local social services. 6 months later, they welcomed their first mothers, 3 women, each with 2 children, all going through difficult situations, unemployment, leaving abusive relationships, lack of family support. The farm was perfect for them. It had space for the children to play. It had work for the mothers to do, giving them purpose and dignity. It had a community, support, something that had been missing in their lives. Jennifer worked directly with the women. She taught sewing to those who wanted to learn, provided emotional support, and listened to their stories. Richard worked with the children, teaching them about the farm, about nature, giving them a sense of belonging. Ethan and Emma loved having other children around. The farm, once so quiet, was now filled with laughter, life, and hope. 1 year after Jennifer had first arrived in that barn, hungry and desperate, the farm was unrecognizable. It was thriving. It had people. It had joy. It had a future. One afternoon, Jennifer was in the old nursery, which was now a sewing room where she taught the women, when Richard appeared at the door. "There's someone here to see you," he said with a strange smile. "Who?" "Come and see." Jennifer went down the stairs and into the living room. There, sitting awkwardly on the sofa, was an elderly woman. She must have been about 70, with completely white hair and a face marked by time, but her eyes were familiar, very familiar. "Mom," Jennifer whispered, unable to believe it, but it couldn't be. Sarah had passed away years ago. She had been at the funeral. "I'm not your mother," the woman said, her voice trembling. "I'm your grandmother, Margaret, Sarah's mother." Jennifer slowly sat in a chair, her legs too weak to hold her. "How? I didn't know you existed. My mother never said—" "Sarah distanced herself from me when she ran away with you," Margaret explained. "She was ashamed. She thought she had failed, that she had ruined her life because of her choices. She wrote me a few letters over the years, but asked me not to look for you." "Then how did you find me?" "I saw a report about the farm," Margaret said, "about the social project you're doing. It showed a photo of you and Richard, and I recognized you immediately. You looked just like Sarah when she was young. Why did you come?" "Because I'm a foolish old woman who wasted many years without knowing my granddaughter," Margaret said, with tears in her eyes. "And I don't want to waste the few I have left. I want to get to know you, Jennifer. Get to know your children, my great-grandchildren, if you'll let me." Jennifer looked at that woman, this grandmother she had never known, and felt a wave of emotion. So many losses throughout life, but also so many discoveries. She had found her father. She had found a home. And now she had found another part of her family. "Of course," she said, standing up and hugging Margaret. "Of course I want to get to know you." They talked for hours. Margaret told her about Sarah, about the girl she was, about the woman she became. She spoke of regrets, of unfulfilled wishes, of a love that never faded despite the distance. "Sarah loved you so much," Margaret said. "She made mistakes, many mistakes. But everything she did was out of love, to protect you." "I know," Jennifer said. "It took time, but now I understand." "She would be proud of you," Margaret said. "Of what you've built here, of how you're helping other women who went through what she went through." "I hope so." Margaret stayed at the farm for a few days. She met Ethan and Emma, who were delighted with their great-grandmother. She met the other mothers and children who were there. She saw how the farm worked, how it was a place of recovery and hope. On the last day before returning to the city where she lived, Margaret called Jennifer for a private conversation. "I want to give you something," she said, taking a small box from her purse. "This belonged to Sarah, and before her it belonged to me. I want you to have it." Jennifer opened the box. Inside was a delicate gold necklace with a crescent moon pendant. It was my mother's who passed it to me, and I passed it to Sarah, Margaret explained. And now it's yours, so you never forget where you came from, the strong women who came before you. Jennifer put on the necklace and hugged her grandmother, crying, "Thank you for everything." Or, "No need to thank me. We're family, it's what we do." After Margaret left, promising to return soon, Jennifer Wilson kept thinking about everything that had happened over the past year. It was almost surreal. It had started so badly, so desperate, and now she had so much. But there was still one thing bothering her, a question that had never been properly answered. Why had she returned specifically to that farm? How, among all possible places, had she ended up there? She mentioned this to Richard one evening. "It wasn't a coincidence," he said. "What do you mean?" "Do you remember the silver bracelet you said was the only thing that came with you from the orphanage?" "I remember. I lost it a few years ago." "Can you describe it?" "It was a simple little bracelet with an engraved plate. It had some coordinates or something like that. I never really understood." Richard stood up and went to fetch something from the office. He returned with a small box. "This is yours," he said, opening the box. Inside was the bracelet. "How? You lost it near here?" "About 3 months before you showed up in the barn. A neighboring farmer found it by the side of the road and brought it to me because he recognized the engraved coordinates. They are the exact coordinates of the farm. I had this bracelet made for Jennifer when she was born, as a way for her to always find her way home." Jennifer took the bracelet with trembling hands. "So I was here nearby before?" "You must have been. I don't remember seeing you, but perhaps you passed by on the road and lost the bracelet. And then when I was looking for a place to rest, without knowing why, I chose to come here," Jennifer completed, "as if something was guiding me. Perhaps it was, or maybe it's just a coincidence. It doesn't matter much. What matters is that you are here now." "True," Jennifer smiled, putting the bracelet back on her wrist. "I'm home." The months continued to pass. The farm prospered. More women arrived, each with their own story of pain and overcoming, and gradually they recovered. They got jobs, rebuilt their lives, moved forward. Some stayed in the region, working in nearby cities. Others returned to their hometowns, but now stronger, better prepared. And new women arrived to fill the empty rooms, continuing the cycle of recovery and hope. Richard became a well-known figure in the region as the farmer who opened his heart and his home to those in need. Jennifer became a sort of counselor for the women, someone who had been through the same and could understand. Ethan and Emma grew up there, surrounded by love and examples of strength. They learned early on about empathy, about helping others, about the importance of community. 3 years after Jennifer arrived at the farm, something special happened. A young woman arrived, pregnant and alone, with nowhere to go. Her name was Ashley. She was only 19 and had been thrown out of her home when her family discovered the pregnancy. Jennifer welcomed Ashley as she would with any other. But there was something different about her, a strength, a determination despite the difficult situation. She worked hard, learned everything she could, and kept her head held high. When the baby was born, a healthy boy that Ashley named Mason, the whole farm celebrated. It was as if that baby represented all the second chances that place offered, all the hope that it was possible to start over. But a few weeks after Mason's birth, a woman appeared at the farm. It was Ashley's mother. She was crying, remorseful. "I made a mistake," she said. "I shouldn't have thrown my daughter out. I was angry, ashamed, but now I just miss her. Please, tell me where she is." Ashley heard everything from inside the house. She could have hidden. She could have told them to send her mother away, but she didn't do that. She came out carrying Mason in her arms and went to her mother. The two looked at each other for a long moment. Then Ashley's mother started crying again. "I'm sorry," she said. "Sorry for everything." "I'm sorry too," Ashley said, "for letting you down." "You didn't let me down. I was the foolish one, and selfish. And may I meet my grandson?" Ashley handed the baby to his grandmother, and there, in the farmyard, another family began to heal. Jennifer Wilson watched the scene with tears in her eyes. Richard was beside her, also moved. "This is why we do this," he said. "For moments like this." "Yes," Jennifer agreed. "It's worth every minute of hard work." That night, after everyone had gone to sleep, Jennifer went up to the old nursery. She hadn't been in there for a long time since it had become the sewing room, but sometimes she liked to go there, sit by the window, and look at the moonlit fields. She touched the crescent moon necklace she always wore now. She thought of Sarah, of Margaret, of all the women who had come before her. Strong women who faced hardships, who made mistakes, but who always carried on. She also thought about the future, about Ethan and Emma growing up strong and kind, about the women who would still come seeking help, about the lives that would still be transformed. "Thank you, Mother," she whispered into the air. "Thank you for protecting me, even when I didn't understand. Thank you for being strong when I needed it. I hope I'm making you proud." A gentle breeze came through the window, moving the curtains. Jennifer smiled. Maybe it was just the wind, or maybe it was Sarah in some way saying yes, she was proud. Jennifer went downstairs and to her room. She no longer slept in the barn. She had a nice room in the main house now, with a comfortable bed and windows that looked out over the fields. But sometimes she still looked at the barn and remembered when she had arrived there, hungry and scared, not knowing what the future held. 5 years after Jennifer's arrival, the farm was a recognized institution in the region. It had helped more than 50 women and their families. Some stories had ended well, with the women recovering and moving forward. Others had been more complicated, but still, everyone had found a moment of peace and safety there. Richard was 68 years old now, but he seemed younger. The work and purpose had given him a new lease on life. He still had difficult moments, still carried the scars of the past, but he was happy, genuinely happy. Ethan was 12 and Emma was 14. They were well-balanced, kind children who understood the value of helping others. Ethan said that when he grew up he wanted to be a veterinarian and take care of the farm animals. Emma wanted to be a teacher and help educate the children who arrived. Jennifer was 38 years old. She had a few grey hairs appearing, wrinkles at the corners of her eyes from smiling so much. She was thinner than before. The hard work had slimmed her figure, but it was a healthy, strong body. She felt good. She felt complete. One Saturday morning she was at the market selling the farm's products when a woman approached the stall. She was a lady of about 60, elegantly dressed. "Are you Jennifer Wilson?" the woman asked. "Yes, that's me." "My name is Barbara. I'm the director of a foundation that works with social projects. I heard about the work you do at the farm, and I'd like to talk about a possible partnership." Jennifer was surprised but interested. They scheduled a meeting for the following week. When Barbara visited the farm, she was impressed. She spoke with the women who were there, heard their stories, saw how the farm operated. "You are doing something incredible," she said, "and the foundation I represent would like to help. We can offer funding to expand the project. More rooms, more resources, maybe even hiring specialized staff like psychologists and social workers." It was too generous an offer to refuse. But Richard and Jennifer hesitated. "We don't want to lose control of the project," Richard said. "We don't want it to become something corporate cold." "It wouldn't be like that," Barbara assured. "The foundation doesn't interfere with management. It only provides resources. You would still be in charge of everything." After much discussion, they accepted the partnership, and it was one of the best decisions they made. With the foundation's funding, they expanded the farm. They built 5 more rooms. They hired a psychologist who visited twice a week. They brought in a social worker to help the women with legal and bureaucratic matters. They improved the infrastructure, installed heating in the rooms, renovated the kitchen, and most importantly, they managed to help more people. What used to serve 3 or 4 families at a time now served 10, and everyone received the same care, the same attention that had always been the farm's hallmark. The media began to take interest. They did stories about the farm, about Richard and Jennifer, about the women who had been helped. The story of the lost daughter who returned and transformed her father's farm into a place of hope touched many people. With visibility came more donations, more support, more recognition. But something unexpected also came. People from other states came to visit the farm, wanting to know how to replicate the model in their own regions. Jennifer and Richard were happy to share what they had learned. They received dozens of people, taught them about management, about how to handle delicate situations, about the importance of keeping the human side even when growing. And gradually, other farms and similar projects began to emerge in different parts of the United States, all inspired by the model that had started on that farm in the countryside. 8 years after Jennifer had arrived, something special happened. The city hall of the nearest town held a ceremony to honor Richard and Jennifer for their social work. It was a big event, with authorities, with the women who had been helped over the years, with the community. Richard gave a short and emotional speech. "I spent most of my life alone," he said, "bitter, stuck in the past, unable to move forward. And then my daughter came back. She came back and showed me that it's never too late to start over, to make a difference, to turn pain into something good. Everything we achieved here at the farm was because of her. She is the true hero of this story." Jennifer was crying when it was her turn to speak. "I'm not a hero," she said. "I'm just a woman who went through hardships and wants to make sure other women don't go through what I went through alone. My father gave me a second chance when I needed it most, and now, together, we're giving second chances to other people. This isn't heroism. It's humanity. It's what we all should do for each other." The entire audience stood up in applause. Among the crowd, Jennifer saw familiar faces: Margaret, her grandmother, crying with pride; Ashley, already with her 4-year-old son, Mason, smiling; several other women who had been through the farm and now had their lives rebuilt. And she also saw Ethan and Emma, almost teenagers now, looking at her with admiration. It was all she needed, to know that she was making a difference, that she was creating a legacy of love and hope. That night, after the ceremony, when everyone had left, Richard and Jennifer stayed on the farm's porch, as they often did. "Do you remember that first night?" Richard asked. "When you were in the barn with the children frying stolen eggs?" "How could I forget?" Jennifer smiled. "I was terrified. I thought you were going to call the police or worse. And I almost did. I almost sent you away without a second thought. What made you change your mind?" "I don't know exactly. Maybe it was the way you looked at your children. Or maybe something inside me, something I didn't even know still existed, recognized you, recognized my daughter. Do you think on some level you knew who I was? Maybe. Or maybe it was just parents recognizing another mother's desperation to do anything for her children, like Sarah did for you." They fell silent for a moment, each lost in thought. "Richard," Jennifer said finally, "I forgive you." He looked at her, surprised. "For what?" "For the betrayal. For the mistake you made so many years ago. I know my mother never managed to fully forgive you. I know you carry that guilt, but I forgive you. You've paid enough. You've suffered enough. It's time to let go." Richard closed his eyes and silent tears streamed down his face. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you, my daughter." They embraced, and in that hug were decades of pain finally being released. There was forgiveness, there was love, there was hope that the future would be better than the past. The years kept passing. The farm became a national reference in social work. Richard aged gracefully, his hair turning completely white, his body growing more fragile, but his mind and spirit remaining strong. Jennifer took on increasing responsibilities in managing the farm as Richard slowed down. She discovered she had a talent for it, for managing, for dealing with people, for solving problems. Ethan and Emma grew up and followed their dreams. Ethan entered veterinary school, Emma went into education. But both returned to the farm on weekends and during vacations, always wanting to help, always maintaining their connection to that place that was their home. Margaret, Jennifer's grandmother, visited regularly. She became a sort of grandmother to all the children at the farm, telling stories, giving advice, offering the affection of someone who had lived a long life and learned from her mistakes. 10 years after Jennifer's arrival, Richard had a health issue. Nothing serious, but enough to remind him he was getting old. He called Jennifer for a serious conversation. "I'm thinking of officially transferring the farm to you," he said. "You don't need to do that now." "I do. I want to do it while I'm still well. while I can still make this decision with a clear mind. The farm was always rightfully yours. Now it will be officially too. Richard. And there's something else. I want you to know that these last 10 years have been the best of my life. Better than anything else I've experienced. You gave me purpose, you gave me family, you gave me peace. I have no words to thank you. You don't need to thank me. You saved me too. Saved me and my children. Then we saved each other. And it was true. Both had arrived broken, lost, carrying old pains, and together they had healed. They had built something beautiful from the ashes of their destroyed lives. The transfer of the farm was made official. Jennifer was now the legal owner of everything, though in practice nothing changed. She and Richard continued working together, making decisions together, but Jennifer began thinking about the future, about what would come after Richard was no longer there. It was a painful thought, one she tried not to dwell on, but she needed to be practical. She started training a team, people who could continue the work if something happened. She hired more staff, delegated more responsibilities. The farm couldn't depend only on her and Richard. It needed to be something that would survive independent of them. And so the years went by. More women arrived, more lives were transformed, more families were rebuilt. 15 years after Jennifer Wilson had arrived on that first night, the farm celebrated an important milestone. It had helped over 200 families, 200 women and their children who had passed through and moved forward with their lives. They threw a big party to celebrate. They tried to invite all the women who had been helped over the years. Not all could make it, but many did. It was emotional to see them all together, sharing stories, supporting each other. Richard, now 78 years old, watched everything with a calm smile. Jennifer sat beside him. "We accomplished something beautiful, didn't we?" she said. "We did. More than I ever imagined possible." "Are you happy?" "More than I have any right to be." "You have every right. You paid for your mistakes and built something wonderful to make up for it. You deserve to be happy." Richard took his daughter's hand. "You know what makes me happiest? Knowing that this will continue after I'm gone, that you will carry on, that the grandchildren will help, that this legacy will endure." "It will. I promise." And she kept that promise. 2 years later, Richard passed away in his sleep, peacefully, at 80. It was a serene departure, as he deserved. The funeral was immense. People from all over the state came to pay their respects. All the women who had been helped by the farm over the years were there. It was a demonstration of the impact he had on so many lives. Jennifer cried, of course. She cried for the loss of her father, for the years they would never have, for everything she still wanted to say and do with him. But she also felt peace. Peace because he had left happy, fulfilled, knowing he had made a difference. The following week, she gathered everyone at the farm to make an announcement. "We are going to create a foundation," she said, "the Richard Thompson Foundation. It will be dedicated to expanding the work we do here to other places. We will help others create similar projects. We will provide funding. We will give support. My father's dream will multiply." And that's what happened. With the Richard Thompson Foundation, dozens of similar projects emerged throughout the United States. Each adapted to the local reality, but all following the same principles: welcome, support, give dignity, and second chances. Ethan, now a trained veterinarian, returned to work full-time at the farm. Emma, a teacher, created a school within the farm to educate the arriving children, ensuring they wouldn't fall behind in their studies during their stay. Jennifer continued in leadership, stronger and wiser than ever. Her hair was turning grey, just like Sarah's had when she passed. And sometimes looking in the mirror, Jennifer saw her mother looking back. 20 years after that first night in the barn, Jennifer was 53 years old. The farm still thrived. It had become a symbol of hope, not only in the region, but throughout the entire country. One afternoon she was working in the office when she received an unexpected call. It was from a woman named Rebecca, who said she had information about Robert, Richard's brother. "I was a nurse at the hospital where he was treated in his final months," Rebecca explained. "He gave me a letter before he passed. He said if you or Richard ever looked for him, I should deliver it. I just saw a news report about you on TV and decided to reach out." A letter? Jennifer was curious. After all this time? He said it was important, that there were things he needed to say but didn't have the courage to in life. Jennifer agreed to meet with Rebecca. The nurse brought a yellowed envelope, clearly stored away for years. Jennifer opened it with trembling hands. Inside were several pages handwritten in the shaky script of someone ill. Richard and Jennifer, if you are reading this, it's because I'm gone and Rebecca has fulfilled my last wish. I don't know if any of you will ever look for me, but in case you do, I want you to know a few things. First, I truly regret everything I did. I know I said this while I was alive, but I need to say it again. I destroyed our family out of greed and ego, and I spent the last years of my life tormented by it. Second, I want you to know the full truth. I didn't tell everything when I confessed. There was more. When I gave money to Sarah over the years, I was trying to maintain control over the situation, but I was also genuinely trying to help. I knew where you were, Jennifer, since you were 8 years old. I followed your life from afar. I watched you grow up. When Sarah left and you went to the orphanage, I wanted to get you. I wanted to take you back to Richard, but I didn't. And why? Because at that time Richard was at rock bottom, drinking too much, the farm a disaster. I convinced myself that you would be better off in the orphanage than with him. It was a rationalization, I know. The truth is, I still wanted the land, and you coming back would mean the end of that dream. But there was one good thing I did. The bracelet you had, Jennifer, with the farm's coordinates. When you turned 18 and left the orphanage, I made sure you had it. I was the one who sent it to you, along with an anonymous letter saying it had belonged to your mother. Why? Because by that point I already knew I was sick. I knew I wasn't going to live long, and I wanted to at least give you a chance to find your way back. I didn't speak to you directly because I was ashamed, but I wanted you to have the option, and you used that option. Somehow, you ended up near the farm. You lost the bracelet, but you came back anyway, as if fate had conspired. Richard, my brother, I hope you had many happy years with Jennifer. I hope my confession didn't ruin that. And Jennifer, I hope you found in Richard the father you deserved, even if it was too late. My last request is simple. Don't waste time being angry with me. I've already paid. I've already suffered. Use your energy for good things, to help people, to build the future instead of being stuck in the past. With love and regret, Robert. Jennifer finished reading with tears streaming down her face, so that was it. Robert had been the reason the bracelet reached her. Somehow, even though he was the person who had caused so much suffering, he had also been instrumental in her reunion with her father. It was complex. Life was complex. People weren't just good or bad. They were both, in different measures, at different times. Jennifer put the letter away. She wasn't going to show it to anyone. It was something between her, Richard, and Robert, and Richard was already gone. So now it was just between her and the memory of two flawed men who, each in their own way, had tried to do the best they could. The years went on. The farm grew. The Richard Thompson Foundation expanded. More and more lives were touched and transformed. Jennifer aged gracefully, remaining active and involved until she was 65. That's when she decided it was time to step back. She passed the main management of the farm to Ethan, who had proven to be capable and dedicated. Emma continued with the school, which was now a benchmark in the region. And Jennifer? She didn't stop completely. She just shifted her focus. She started traveling across the country, visiting the other projects inspired by the farm, giving talks, sharing her experience, inspiring other people. She also dedicated time to writing. She wrote a book telling her story, the story of Richard, of Sarah, even of Robert. She was brutally honest about everything, about the mistakes, about the pain, but also about the redemption, about the forgiveness, about how it was possible to turn suffering into purpose. The book was a success. It touched thousands of people, and all the income from it went back to the foundation. At 70 years old, Jennifer looked back and saw a full life, full of pain, yes, but also full of love, purpose, and meaning. She had arrived at that broken and hungry farm, and she had left. No, she hadn't left, she had stayed, and she had built something beautiful. Ethan had married and given her 2 grandchildren. Emma had also married and had a son. The farm was now in the fourth generation of the family, with her great-grandchildren running through the same fields where she had arrived so many decades ago. Margaret, her grandmother, had passed away at 90 years old, peacefully, surrounded by love. She left Jennifer all the memories of Sarah she had kept, photos, letters, stories, and Jennifer gathered all of this with her own memories, with the stories she had lived, and created an archive, a family archive, of the generations of strong women who came before and who would come after. One afternoon, sitting on the same porch where she had spent so many evenings with Richard, Jennifer looked at the fields golden in the setting sun. She heard the laughter of the children who were temporarily at the farm. She smelled dinner being prepared in the kitchen. She heard Ethan talking to someone about the animals. She saw Emma coming out of school, finishing her day of classes, and she felt complete peace. Her journey had been long and difficult. It had started with hunger and despair, but it had ended with fulfillment and love. She touched the crescent moon necklace she never took off. She thought of Sarah, of Richard, of Margaret, of all who had been part of her story. "Thank you," she whispered to the wind, "for everything, for the pains that taught me, for the loves that healed me, for the second chances that transformed me." The sun set completely, giving way to the night. The crescent moon appeared in the sky, bright and clear. Jennifer smiled. Always the crescent moon, always reminding her of where she came from, who she was, the path she had traveled. She got up and went into the house. She had a life to live, a family to love, a legacy to uphold, and she would do all of this with the same spirit Richard had taught her, with the same strength Sarah had shown, with the same resilience Margaret had embodied, because that was what it meant to be a woman of the Thompson family. It meant falling and getting back up. It meant suffering and overcoming. It meant transforming pain into hope, always. And this story, this journey of a hungry woman who knocked on a barn door and ended up finding not just a home but a purpose. This story would continue. It would continue in the lives of the women helped, in the children educated, in the grandchildren and great-grandchildren raised with love. Because some stories don't end when the last word is spoken. Some stories live forever, echoing through the generations, inspiring, transforming, giving hope. And this was one of those stories. End of story. Now tell me, what did you think of this story? Do you think Jennifer made the right decisions? And Richard, did he deserve a second chance even after the mistakes he made? Did Robert surprise you in any way? I'd love to hear your honest opinion about all of this. Leave in the comments what you found most moving, which part touched you the most. And don't forget to hit that like button to support our work and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other amazing stories. Thank you so much for staying until the end.